Your job is to serve your clients' beauty needs. Don't get
Right.
lost about what your job is to make them, help them to look beautiful, and they've been suffering for the last 4 to 6 weeks because they have not been able to look as beautiful as normal. So what could we do to help them look beautiful?
Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show. Yeah, that's right. And today on the Evo Revo Show, we're going to talk about your salon's reopening plan and what you need to do to get ready to reopen your salon. I've got with me, as always, Mr. Doug Campbell. What's up, Doug? Good to see you, brother.
How's it going?
Dude, super good. Good to see you. On today's show, like I said, we're going to talk about what Doug and I are preparing with other salon owners, what Doug's preparing in his salon, what we're talking about. We're going to talk about getting your staff to look the part. We're going to talk about how do you prep your guests. We're going to talk about pricing, because this has been a hot topic, right, Doug? Pricing's a really big deal. Also, who should be coming back? Are there people who shouldn't come back? And also, how to spread the guests around so that everybody's not in a panic mode about how they can operate and get everybody there. So if you're excited about that, do me a favor. And in the chat, say excited. We're going to have some discussions. If you have questions about reopening, go ahead and do me a favor. Drop them in the comments. A lot of you guys may know Georgia and a couple of other states are getting ready to reopen. And I know there's a lot of questions out there. There's a lot of arguments too, Doug, happening about should you reopen, shouldn't you reopen, and there's a lot of drama going on with that. But I just want to say this. As we start this podcast, I just want to say you need to check and see what your local state is doing. You need to know your own information, and you need to do the research. What Doug and I are really big on is you need to make your own decisions. We are not a cookie cutter solution that says just do it our way or else. That's not how we roll, right, Doug?
That's right.
We are big on, like, you need to figure this out. We're going to give you the information, let you make the decision, and then let you decide. And by the way, whatever you decide, to reopen or not reopen, you're going to get pushback from the other side. So don't worry. Just decide what you want to do. Anything you want to say about that, Doug, from that standpoint?
Yeah, the way I'd say is we're all adults here.
Right.
Make the right decision for your area, for your place, for your employees, for your customers. Just do it right. I mean, you're smart enough to look at what's required, what's suggested, what's recommended, and put together a plan that works for you. And like I say, you're never going to make everybody happy, but I think you do need to get your staff and your clients need to find that place where you can serve everybody as safely as possible.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot from the standpoint of, like how you can get together with your staff. Like, I think you need to make this decision as a staff. This is not a unilateral decision. If you will open as soon as you can, do me a favor, as soon as you can, say as soon as you can in the chat. If you're going to wait, do me a favor and say wait. I want to know what are your thoughts, because there's not a one size fits all here. So Doug, let's talk about getting your staff to look the part. I mean, staff has been out of work now for, in some cases, weeks, in some cases more than a month. That means that there's some things that need to happen before you reopen, right? So let's talk about getting your staff to look the part and be the part when they come back to work. Can you talk about that for a sec, what you guys are going to be doing?
Yeah, I think you just got to make sure that you're doing that people are coming in a week early and setting up to where they have the opportunity to do each other's hair. So it does two things. It gets them in the rhythm of doing hair. Right. It gets them back on their feet. It gets them, and it makes sure everybody looks good, because your staff needs to look good. Especially, they're probably going to be wearing a mask when they come back to work.
Yeah,
so
99, most likely there's going to be a mask on their face.
Right. So, what can we do? And then that gets them back interacting with each other. They'll make sure that everything in the salon is functioning. You find any problems beforehand. And that should be fun. I mean, get together and have a good time with it. Get all of them and their hair together. Get your mindset together. That's a great time to get your plan together for how, as a team, you're going to approach this.
Yeah. And I think, we've been talking about this. It's like we've been recommending since the beginning, get together with your staff on Zoom on a regular basis, provided they were still remain employed by you. and be having conversations. Talk about what you learned. Talk about what you're grateful for. Talk about the changes that have happened in your family and the things you're excited about. Get them back in a positive mindset, because I think more than anything, you may be some of the first contact they have after being in somewhat of a quarantine mode. So remember, you're there to serve them, not only just from, cut color, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually. Like, a lot of that is going to be, you're going to be taking all of these stories and listening to all these things. So, have your staff look the part, have your staff be prepared. I love being able to go in early, make your staff feel like they've been working. Doug, you mentioned things about having your staff get ready at home right now too, because for a lot of them, they might have been sitting around where are not normally sitting around. Let's talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, so they've not been on their feet the way they're normally on their feet. So what we've recommended at ours is, one, get as active as you can, whether it's walking, stretching, doing yoga, but also just when you're hanging out and watching TV, if you're watching Netflix or whatever it is you're watching, that you stand up, don't sit on the couch.
Yeah,
They
totally.
get used to standing on your feet for 8 hours a day, because otherwise that first week's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's the comfortable shoe versus the most fashionable shoe that first week too.
All the important details, like footwear, but truth, right, is like, this is a little bit more about comfort. This isn't come in your quarantine pajamas to work sort of deal, but we are saying, like, make sure that your staff is wearing some shoes that are their more comfortable shoes, that they can be ready for this, drastic adjustment back the other direction, right?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that has worked out before and then quit and then went back to the gym, worked out again, that first week sucks.
Right.
So I'm saying that if they just start getting prepared, be on their feet as much as possible, because most of them just aren't thinking in that mode. Right. It's one of the things, as a leader, you need to point out your team. It's like, hey, guys, get up, stand up as much as you can. Everybody else in the living room can be sitting down. You need to be standing up. Get used to being on your feet. You're going to appreciate that fact the week after you're open, if you've already been up. Otherwise, you're going to have a rough week.
Yeah. By the way, if this has been helpful so far, do me a favor and comment in the chat and just say helpful, because, we're talking about this. And we want to make sure on this podcast and on this video show, we want to make sure that you guys are getting as much detailed information as possible about what to do. The other big thing that we're talking about is, like, not only do you have to get your staff ready, you've got to get your guests ready, right, Doug? I mean, all of these guests are going to walk in and they don't really know how to behave. Like, a lot of people learned how to behave at the grocery store, right? It's like we're trying to figure out, what's the grocery store? What's the sneeze guard for? What are the 6 feet on the floor for? Like, we're having to learn all these things new. And so what kind of things can we do to get our guests prepared? Because I don't think it's a good plan, at least in my mind, Doug, for people to walk in the door and get slapped in the face with a face mask and told to stand out in their car and wait in this line. Like, that's going to be really weird if the first experience of them coming back is like, oh, I can't wait to get to the salon. And they're like, cool, scrub up, like put on your rubber gloves and come and have a relaxing salon afternoon, right? So how can we get our guests ready, and what can we tell them before they even get there?
Yeah, so I think you need to prep them as best as possible. You send out an email saying what they should expect. Like, we're requiring all of our guests to wear a mask. We're going to provide some masks, but our masks are going to be cloth masks that are cleanable, sterilizable, that are going to be reused. If they're not comfortable with that, then they need to have their own mask. Need to do the questionnaire. So if you've been around anybody, if you've been around anybody, you might run a fever or anything, please reschedule your appointment.
Yeah, if you show any symptoms too, right? If you've had any symptoms within this amount of time, then you need to make sure you come in. Like, this is not your hair is not an emergency to warrant putting other people at risk. So be responsible with coming into the salon, right?
Right. And we're going to do temperature checks. We'll do temperature tests. So, but we just want them to expect
are
that.
you getting one of those, like, infrared forehead, like one of those guys? I just looked up those yesterday. There's a ton of those.
Yes. We're getting the one that's the no touch.
Yeah, and you're checking staff and guests, yeah?
Yep. Anybody over 99 degrees has to exit the building.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just, and I think if you prep people, you get people so they expect it. Because the grocery store example, I mean, really and truly, nobody really knew. Every time you go into the grocery store, everything's different.
Yeah, the grocery store didn't email you and say, by the way, today at the grocery store, expect a giant sneeze guard like you would at the bank or something like that, right?
What are these X's? What are these arrows? What? So anyway, I think the more that we can prepare them as to what to expect, what the environment is, and I think that will put them at ease also, that they know that we're taking proper precautions.
Yeah, totally.
It's just so on that, like with whatever your cosmetology board is putting out, make sure you really understand what's required, what's suggested, and what's recommended. Mm-hmm. because there's a difference there. You got to figure out what's important for you. If you're in a warmer area, like right now, if you're in South Florida, having people sit in their car instead of coming in the waiting room may not be the best idea because they have to sit there with their car running. They may not want to do that. If they come in, so what would the interior space look like? Can you accommodate people safely in that area? It's like getting rid of all magazines, getting rid of any material that people could touch.
Right.
It's something that's super important.
Yeah, I think there's some other good things in here too, because we're talking about social distancing. And Doug, you mentioned some interesting things. I think here's the problem. People end up reading this whole thing on social distancing, and like this question came in. Megan asked a really good question. She said, what are you doing about stylists who typically work with associates, have 3 to 4 clients at a time? They're only going to make a quarter of their income through this whole process. Megan, I just want to say this. You're making some very big assumptions here, right? And Doug, and like, there's this level of like, well, how are you going to create social distancing? How do you keep people 6 feet apart? I read this one outrageous claim that somebody said, Doug, is they said, so some of the biggest salons in Georgia are telling their staff to limit conversations to only the consultation, not talk about anything else. And I was like, I think people are going down this crazy path of how they're interpreting the rules. Right. So let's talk about this, because I think this is a really big deal. And Megan, this isn't on you. I'm just saying you might be making some assumptions here that we can help limit what maybe will spin out of this. Yeah.
Right. So the thing about social distancing, the 6 foot thing, there's a reason. There's a very good reason for the 6 feet, because a uncovered mouth and nose, water molecules coming out about. They won't go more than 6 feet under normal circumstances. So if you're 6 feet away from somebody, you can converse, you can talk, you can do all that stuff. Okay. If both people are wearing a mask, now then the water particles can only travel maybe inches.
Right.
Instead of feet. So that allows you to get closer. That 6 feet is no longer, because we got to remember the 6 feet because of the water molecules coming out of your mouth, or droplets coming out of your mouth and traveling 6 feet. We put a mask on. We stop, as long as both people. That's why we're requiring both people do it. Otherwise, it's impossible to do someone's hair if you can't do it.
and that's where I'm saying, Megan, I'm not making sense. Listen, what I'm saying is, if the guest is wearing a mask, and the stylist is wearing a mask, and the associates are wearing a mask, the 6 feet social distancing thing is a different scenario. And I think what's going to happen, I think a lot of people are having this assumption that people are going to be, not as busy. What are you going to do when you're not making as much income? All these different things that are going on, is that I think that you're actually going to be busier than you've ever been. I think that you're going to have multiple associates working. You're going to have people, in that environment. And again, I think this is really helpful for most people to understand, is that proximity changes once the masks go on. Like, that's the thing, is the masks are designed to allow you to be in this closer proximity here. Right. Now, and there's a question on requirements versus suggestions, right? This is a really important thing, is that, if masks are required, that allows you to get closer. Again, same thing. If the guest and the stylist is wearing a mask, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. This doesn't mean like, don't open your mouth, don't get close, scrub them with a broom from 10 feet away while you're doing a shampoo. Like, that's not, people are interpreting these rules very loosely, and usually people are interpreting them with a negative perception. In my opinion, that's what I'm seeing over and over again with salons.
Interpretation out of fear.
Right. And they're like, well, but if we're going to be within 6 feet of each other, then everybody's going to catch this virus. Not if you have a mask on, not if you're washing your hands. I mean, it's just reduced. It goes from like, a very low percentage of transference rates to an even lower percentage. So it's just important for you guys to be tuned into this. Pay attention to the guidelines of what's going on. Yeah, don't make looser assumptions about what's happening, for sure. And make sure that this is a really important thing, that you don't.
The whole reason that they've gone to the mask thing with the CDC and the recommendations, all that stuff, is because they know that in order for this economy to open back up, people are going to have to be getting in close proximity to each other.
Which is why the masks are required.
Everybody's wearing masks, because they got to remember, the issue is the water droplets coming out of your mouth and your nose. That's the issue. So if we can control those, and then in other areas still keep up your wiping things down, having sneeze guards up, doing all those things, and you create a safe environment. Yeah, it's going to be much safer than it was before, when people were still operating with no mask.
Right.
But the important thing is, everybody has to wear a mask.
Right.
In close proximity, everybody has to wear a mask. It can't be exceptions.
Yeah, and again, just being aware of like, this whole idea, and I'm at my house, so I'm touching my face, right? But like this idea of touching your face or itching your face, part of what the mask is designed to do as I've watched this, is the mask is designed to prevent you from touching your face, which is your nose and mouth, and transferring germs from your nose and mouth to surfaces and then back to your nose and mouth, right? Or to another person. Like if I touch my nose and mouth, then touch something, Doug touches it, and then it goes back to his nose and mouth. Like that's how it gets transferred. And I think it's really important for you to be aware that these are what the guidelines are for. So if you're washing your hands, you're taking care of it, you are wearing a mask, your guest is wearing a mask, the transference gets greatly reduced is a really big thing. Like Doug said, not having magazines out, not having touchables, but doing things like wiping down your credit card terminals because people are going to have to touch them and know what's going on. Having that hand sanitizer there. By the way, there's great ways to make hand sanitizer. I know a lot of people are freaking out. You can't find hand sanitizer. Google some recipes for making hand sanitizer. There's alcohol, aloe, and some other essential oils. You can make your own that'll still create the same germ protection you would from a purchased hand sanitizer. Now, Doug, I want to talk about this because this topic came up around associates and split shifts and like, I keep hearing this fear mongering of like the salons are going to be slower than ever before. People are going to have to space out their appointments. It's going to be slow. I don't think that's going to be the case from a slow perspective. I think they're going to be busier than they've ever been. I think stylists are going to be overloaded. So, you run a commission salon. We work a lot with commission salons here. What are some of the things that you think can help lighten that load? And you're going to have a backlog of a month and a half worth of appointments trying to all come in. Let's talk about how do we prioritize appointments? And then what are the other ways to get more people in less amount of time, which I think is what's going to be really going on here. My assumption, right?
Right. Well, so I'd say one of the things is if you're not split shifting right now, so you're not expanding your hours where you can split shift, I would expand my hours so I could split shift. That's going to create the capacity inside your current place. So that's the first thing to look at. And that's an opportunity because then you can continue to do that in the future. So then you have more capacity moving into the future because there's a huge demand out there. People have not been able to get in. So people are going to have to do 2 months worth of clients in 1 month. And
right.
That's impossible for some busy stylists. I think pushing those stylists onto junior stylists and getting the team to work together to get people through this, I think is very advisable. If you don't have your books full already, I think you got to prioritize it. I think you look at if you don't have a VIP program, then just look and say, who are my most valuable people? I'm going to reach out to them first and reward them for doing business with me all these years, as opposed to the new person just trying to get in. That's it. So the way it works is loyalty program, VIP program. So VIPs first, and people on your loyalty program, and then your regular people, and the last would be the walk-ins. I'd love to be able to take care of them, but I'm going to treat the people that have been treating me well the longest, the best.
Yeah, and I also want to say this. There's other opportunities. We talked about this. Is like use this as an opportunity to make sure that your guests are doing what we've always asked guests to do, right? Which is pre-book appointments, put deposits down for appointments, pay in advance for appointments. Because I think one of the worst things that's going to happen through this whole process, if you're not prepared for it, is that you're going to have guests that no-show on appointments like you typically would inside the salon, but there's somebody who really wanted that spot. So like Doug said, VIPs, loyalty program, and then I would say like prepaid appointments. People who said, look, I'm going to pay for my appointment and understand that if I don't show up because that spot is so valuable right now, I will be charged anyway if I no-show. Like that's a really important rule to have in place. And then same thing, deposits for appointments would be the next, and then other walk-ins. And again, when we say walk-ins, you might say, hey, for the first 30 days, you might want to tell our guests we're not accepting walk-ins. You may put signage on the door that says, currently not accepting walk-ins, please call the schedule because we are so busy. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned about, in your state, what's the restrictions? I'm in California, Doug's in Florida. You guys are from all over. By the way, do me a favor, type in what state you're from in the chat because every state's going to be different. You're going to have to look at what your local regulations are, but I want you to be aware is wait until you find out what the regulations are for your state. But this is a good framework to start to get your staff prepped, be thinking about this and make it happen. Because Doug, we're talking about if you've never done split shifting before, this may be an amazing time to start split shifting and put that in place before you start getting flooded with guests. If you want to extend your hours, this may be an opportunity to extend your hours. If you want to be open on additional days of the week, right? These are all things that are super, super important. Doug, I want to talk about this because I think this is a topic that we get questions all the time on this from our salon owners. We're going to have to run things on sale. We're going to have to entice people to come back in. We should probably be discounting everything because, we're struggling right now. Let's talk about this because I think our attitude may be unpopular with the average stylist on planet Earth right now. But can we talk about why discounting is actually going to create more of a challenge right now?
There's no reason to put things on sale right now.
Right.
It is important.
I hope you guys heard that.
super important to sell stuff right now, but not put things on sale. Most people are going to be out of their products. They've probably used every type of everything that's been building up in their bathroom has probably been used by now.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to need
all
to
the
replenish.
bottom of the barrel stuff. They've been making it work.
Right. It's like, oh, I remember I bought this 2 years ago, and I'm using it now. So people are going to need to replenish. So your top sellers, I would buy more of, but I wouldn't put anything. There's no reason to put it on sale right now because people, and if you believe that it's because you're helping out because people are somehow broke through this thing, the people that are financially hurting this thing is very small. Most people actually have more money because they got the stimulus check. The vast majority of Americans got a stimulus check. Nobody's going out to dinner. No, you're putting a much less gas in your car. You're not going shopping. So all the things that normally you would spend money on is now still sitting in your bank. Yeah. So now the opportunity is to make sure you had the right conversation with the person, not about how the world's coming to the end and the sky's falling, but what do you need? What do you need to take? Or now's the time you want to try something different. You've been waiting to try this new shampoo or this new line. Now's a perfect opportunity to do that. Having the right, because your job is to serve your clients' beauty needs. Don't get lost about what your job is to make them, help them to look beautiful. And they've been suffering for the last 4 to 6 weeks because they have not been able to look as beautiful as normal. So what could we do to help them look beautiful?
Yeah, and I would ask you this, and again, this is hopefully a challenging question for some of you. What will you be spreading when you open your salon? And I don't mean that from a standpoint of like, are you spreading the virus? I mean, are you spreading hope? Are you spreading enthusiasm? Are you spreading joy? Are you spreading love? What are the things that you want to be tuned into? And I think this idea, Doug, you mentioned it, is that a lot of people think everybody's broke right now, people don't have money, and if you get that out of your head, like where did that come from? It's probably a thought you created. More people have money now than they've ever had before. Don't get me wrong, there are people, even if it's 30% of the population, which it's not, by the way, even if it's 20%, that means 2 out of every 10 people. Did you guys hear me? 2 out of every 10 people might have had different financial hardships, but that means 8 out of every 10 guests that you sit down with are not. So I just want to ask you, what conversations are you going to have when you sit down with your guests? Are you going to be having conversations like, and again, you get to control these conversations, right? You either get to say, oh, what was the hardest thing about quarantine for you? What family members did you know that got sick? What are the problems that exist? Like, the life will be sucked out of you if that's the conversation you have. You're going to be more tired than ever before. Instead of this, what did you learn while you were in quarantine? Right? What did you learn?
What new habits did you pick up that would be good moving forward?
What did
and one of the things I want to hit real quick, Jason, because people are asking talking about childcare and stuff.
Yes.
So especially if you work in a commission-based salon, this is a great thing for you as a team to come together. Not everybody in your salon works every day. Mm-hmm. So you could team up, and that's where split shifting comes in very helpful too. Totally. Team up and share childcare with each other.
Yes.
Most of the salon kids know each other anyway, and they really like each other. In our back room, we allow a certain age of children to come in and stay back there. There's rules that they have to follow. They understand what the rules are, but that's been a standing policy. We're very family friendly. But there's a lot of people, if you team up and ask, and some of the ones that don't even have kids may love to say, yeah, I would be happy to help you out and watch your children.
That's right.
So asking the people around you that know your children, that you know them, you know what they've been around, I think that's a very good way to handle the child care issue. If you're a solo person, it's going to be a little bit more challenging.
Maybe there's other renters that are in your suite or wherever it is you can team up with, or people that you know. Be aware, be resourceful, and the thing I want you guys to get out of this, and I hope this has been really helpful. If this has been really helpful, do me a favor and say super helpful. But we just really want you to get this. You will control the attitude and energy at which you look at reopening your salon. If your staff is freaking out, it's probably because you haven't done the education with them yet to talk about what are the rules and what's going on. If your guests are freaking out, same thing. You haven't done anything. I think the number one thing that I'd get out of this podcast, and we got to run, is that everything has to do with how prepared you have been and how you have made people aware of what's going on. If you don't have that conversation with them, if you don't put the rules in place, people will make up their own rules. Your staff will make up their own rules. Your guests will make up their own rules. If you set the rules, you will set expectations. You will lead the conversation. You will have positive conversations with your staff and with your guests. And I would just say this, your salon should be the center of hope for your community. You should spread the right type of attitude. And the more that attitude is positive, the better experience your clients and guests will have, not only with you, but with everything else. We got to run. Doug, thanks so much for being on, bro. Anything you want to say as we wrap?
I just say, the more you inspire, the more you will be inspired. So
Yes.
think about that, man. Just put that in your head. Inspire people. You're inspired, and that energy will start to flow around your salon, and you will be the oasis of hope in your town.
There you go. If you guys want more information about our podcast and how to get information on episodes like this, do me a favor. Comment with the word podcast. Check us out, Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere else that you can find podcasts. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.